Hello everybody, MinishCap1 here, Singed 2025 Season 15 Item Guide. Let's get right into it. I have my items here separated out into sections, and there will be corresponding YouTube chapters at the bottom. One thing I want to talk about before we get into it is that Singed is a very versatile item carrier and a very versatile champion in general. He is a character that can use many different items, play many different builds, and fit into many different team comps. He is not a primary engaged champion. He is much better at following up. When I load into a game, what I tend to look for is what attributes my team comp has, what attributes the enemy team comp has, and try and itemize a little bit around that. When you start doing that, you're going to experience a lot more success with the champion. So for example, if I load into a game and I see that the enemy team has like a very standard team comp, right? And my team comp has maybe like a Leona support, a Xin jungle, we have okay frontline, we have decent CC, then maybe I am going to itemize a bit heavier ability power to try and capitalize off of my teammates' crowd control and run over the game. Or if I load into a game and I see that my team comp has maybe 4 ranged champions and they're all squishy, maybe I will itemize a little bit tankier, right? If I see that my team comp has very low crowd control, maybe I'll grab a Rylai's and help my team apply some CC. Or if I see that my team has very low engage, maybe I'll grab a Rocket Belt and try and use the dash to get into range and make some plays happen, right? It just depends. But if you use your head a little bit and you itemize appropriately around team comps, you should be fine. But if you need help, that's what this guide is for. All right, let's get right into it. Starting items. Your general best starting items on Singed, or your general best starting setup on Singed, your most generic one that is going to give you the most success overall is going to be Doran's Ring plus 2 potions. So Doran's Ring gives you 90 health, 18 ability power, almost as much ability power as an Amtome, which gives you 20. Then the 2 potions give you 120 health each. So your effective health gain is 120 plus 90 with this setup. Or sorry, 240 plus 90 because you have 2 health potions. Which means if you were to example instead start refill Dark Seal gives you 50 health and refill potion gives you 200 health total because of 2 charges, because these individually give less HP. The benefit of starting this over Doran's Ring 2 potion is that you save 150 gold because you're buying a refill potion, and then you're not going to be spending an extra 150 on the refill potion when you get back to lane, because you're not buying any potions, and then this is going to refill itself, and then you have it's an econ start. Essentially, it is going to be weaker in terms of combat stats versus Doran's Ring Dark Seal, or sorry, versus Doran's Ring 2 potion. So when you're starting out, I recommend you go Doran's Ring 2 potion. Then as you get more comfortable, if you know that there's a matchup where you can succeed pretty easily, that you're confident in being greedy against, then feel free to go refill potion Dark Seal instead. You'll have a little bit weaker early game, but your econ lead will start from the very beginning, which is good because Singed is a champion that's quite good at farming. Other options for starting items are going to be something like, you can potentially do, let's see, cloth armor for potion. You can even do cloth armor refill. Something like this would be good if you're in a matchup where you're very uncomfortable. Maybe you're against like a Darius or a Set top lane. Maybe you're against a Jace where you want to try and rush a defensive component very fast, like a Chain Vest, or maybe you want to get like a Tabby. Steel caps, right, very quickly. That can be helpful in the situation. Your farming is going to suffer a lot, and as you practice with Singed, you shouldn't need to do it, but it is an option. Another nice option, I actually quite like this setup versus AP top laners at the beginning, things like Kennen, Vladimir, Aurora, is you can actually go Null Magic Mantle and 2 health potion. So with this, this is decent when you know you have to buy Merc Treads that game. If you know for sure you have to buy Merc Treads, you can be very greedy and start Null Magic Mantle. If any team comp has a whole lot of crowd control, right, and magic damage, it can be quite helpful. At some point, you do want to get ability power in your early game, so you can go back to base for a Doran's Ring at some point and just help your mana regen as well, because you will suffer for farm and push and mana regen without something like a Dark Seal or another AP item to help you wave clear faster, right? One of my favorite underrated Singed starting item options is actually Boot Start with Refill Potion. This is very dangerous because you have no combat stats, you have movement speed, but you have no plus health, you have no plus AP, you have no armor, you have no MR. So it's very greedy. However, this start can be quite optimal if you're able to get away with it, because guess what? If you start the game with boots refill, now instead of your swiftness boots costing 1,000, they cost 700, which is quite easy to get to in the early game. And there are certain matchups where I do like to go this setup, like if you're against a laner that likes to set up on you with a skill shot in lane, maybe like a Set with his E, a Darius with his E pull, things like that, where you're going to have to be a little bit more defensive anyways and not push out as aggressively. This can be quite helpful, and then you can TP back to lane once you have about 1,000 gold, and then now you have a about 700 gold. Now you have a very fast tier 2 boots, and then you can just outspeed your opponent and farm the lane out when you're level 6. Very fun setup, very hard though, so just be aware. If you do this, you're going to need to practice first. Cull. Never ever start Cull as your first item, because it will give you Adaptive Force AD. However, on your first recall, like say you start the game with like a Doran's Ring 2 potion, and then on your first recall you can buy like Boots Cull. And I like Cull against matchups where you have to farm a lot and you have a hard time solo killing them. Things like tank champions, or if the enemy top laner buys a Cull, you can also respond to the Cull. Maybe sometimes you're against a Gwen goes Cull sometimes, and you want to respond with this, you absolutely can. But just don't buy it first, because you'll get Adaptive Force AD. So watch here, if I buy this, my AP turns into AD, right? But if I have Doran's Ring and then I buy a Cull, I keep the AP instead, right? So just bear in mind, you can't buy it at the very start, but you can buy it afterwards to greedy farm. On Singed, I never ever hold on to it after I'm done farming it. I just sell it instantly because the stats are useless to you. It's like 7 AD and 3 health on hit. Who cares? Get rid of it on Singed, but it is an option. All right, moving on to component items. So your components on Singed are quite important. When you are building towards your first item, you need to decide what item you're buying first, and then buy your components around that. So most games you're going to buy Leandries first. And in that case, you need to choose between having Faded Ashes or having Haunting Guise. And both of these will build out of an Amp Tome, but one of them builds out of Ruby Crystal. So if you have 800 gold, for example, on Singed, one of my favorite recalls to do is just go double Amp Tome. And with that, you can build into Leandries, you can build into Rocket Belt. You can't build into Rylai's, unfortunately, with double Amp Tome. But double Amp Tome is plus 40 AP. You have almost as much wave clear as a Faded Ashes, which costs 900. So I did the math on this on Target Dummies earlier, and with double Amp Tome, your poison is only like 3 DPS lower than Faded Ashes, which is kind of crazy. So if you have 800 and not 900, you can recall just for this, and you can play around that to build into Leandries first, Rocket Belt first, maybe even a Shirley's if you're feeling that. But in general, my starting components, my early components will be dictated by what legendary item I'm going to buy first. Most of the time it's going to be Leandries, but it's going to depend, right? Hextech Alternator, I should probably talk about actually before I move on the build order of Leandries itself. So I tend to prefer Faded Ashes over Haunting Guise because I tend to value the wave clear more. But if you're in a matchup where you have to fight and they're fighting you a lot, Haunting Guise is a bit better because it'll give you better combat stats over time. Okay, moving on. Alternator and Codex, these build into Rocket Belt. So Rocket Belt I love a lot. This item is fantastic on Singed. I'll talk about it more in the actual APM section, but if I'm buying Rocket Belt first, I almost always go Codex first, and the reason why is because you get 10 ability haste. This ability haste will actually allow you to pop your ultimate, and like when the waves are in an even state, like say the waves are meeting right here, you can actually pop your R at level 6, farm it out, go proxy a wave, farm this out, execute or recall, respawn, run back to lane, and then by the time you're here and the waves are neutral again, your ult is like 10 or 15 seconds off cooldown, then you can wait to do it again. And in a super hard matchup, that is very, very helpful to you if you are trying to go for a tempo setup, right? Or in a matchup where maybe Leandries is not as beneficial to you, right? So against maybe a ranged top laner, if you're able to do that, that's very helpful to you because Leandries is not as good, whereas Rocket Belt gives you a gap closer, right? Giant Spelt, Blasting Wand, these build into Rylai's. Rylai's is going to be your safest first item. It's going to make you the hardest to gank. It's going to give you the most CC. It does not give you the most damage, and there's no gap closer, however. But if you don't know what to buy, if you have no idea, just buy Rylai's or Leandries, right? You can't really go wrong with those two items. There is room for error, in my opinion, when you buy a Rocket Belt first in the wrong situation. But if your first item is either Rylai's or Leandries, you're generally never going to go wrong. You do have to be a bit careful if you're going Rylai's build path because your big AP component, Blasting Wand, is 850 gold, and there is no component item that builds into Blasting Wand. So saving up that 850 can be a little bit painful, But if you can manage to do that and get the Rallies online, it's 2.6k gold. It's quite cheap. Only 50 gold more for Rocket Belt, by the way. But Rallies is quite cheap if you can get this online. I like this item a lot versus champions that chase you a lot, like Darius, Set, or against some ranged top laners. If you're able to get into range of them to catch them, they have a hard time getting away. Oddly enough, Rallies is also quite good against tanks because they can't get away from you. You can't really kill them, but they can't get away from you. So if you apply CC on them during a gank, it's almost a guaranteed kill, but you're not going to be the one that deals the damage. Your jungler usually is, right? So Aether Wisp builds into Shurelya's or Cosmic Drive. I love this component in really, really hard matchups. I sometimes even buy 2 of them and just go like Shurelya's and Aether Wisp. It gives you 30 AP, 4% movement speed. It's just a decent item early game to just tempo with. If you are unsure what to buy, sometimes you can just, and you're falling behind, you can just slam 2 of these and play the game out from there. It's fun. It's a little bit cheesy, but it is something that you can consider if you enjoy those items. But I'll talk about those more in the section down here. Okay, Winged Moonplate. I usually, if I buy this, I'm usually rushing Deadman's Plate, or if I'm not rushing DMP, I'm going to pair it with an Aether Wisp to do like maybe Cosmic into DMP. It just gives you health and movement speed. It's a decent enough item. Cloth Armor builds into Chain Vest if you are going down the DMP route. Needlessly large rod. So this is one of my favorite new components I've started building on Singed. If you are able to farm 1.2k gold without recalling on Singed, you should consider a Needlessly Large Rod, because if you can get a death cap really early, this item spikes Singed incredibly hard because of your ultimate, right? More so than other champions. Other champions, they have a hard time rushing decap unless their name is Veigar, because they don't have like a bigger AP pool from other items to amplify their AP as much. With Singed, because of your ultimate giving you all, AP at level 1, 2, and 3 ultimate, 6, 11, and 16, it's not bad at all. At level 6, you get 25 AP, which does get amped by death cap, but it's more noticeable at level 11, and especially noticeable at level 16, where you're getting almost 100 ability power from your ultimate. So having a death cap to amplify that is quite nice. And if you do rush death cap, you don't have health, but I want you to consider something. So the Needlessly Large Rod component for 1.2k gives you 65 ability power, okay? How much AP do you think Liandry's gives for 3k gold? 60. How much AP do you think Rylai's gives for 2.6? 65, right? Rocket Belt is 70, so this is actually a much better AP value than these 2 items for less gold, but Needlessly Large Rod for 1.2k gold gives you 65 ability power. This item is a lot of wave clear early. Consider buying a death cap first. I tend to only build death cap first versus fighters that have low sustain. I don't like it as much versus tanks because Liandry's or Rylai's is better. I don't like it versus ranged top laners because Rocket Belt is better. But versus fighters with low sustain, this is not bad at all to rush. Moving on, early game items. Your boots on Singed. Boot section. You're gonna almost usually, like, it's like 85% of games you're gonna go Swifties. Most games Swifties, maybe even 90%. These boots just give you a decent flat movement speed, right? Highest flat movement speed out of any boot, unless you have upgraded Baron boots, but we're not. Those are more for mid lane, so I'm not gonna talk about them here. And then it synergizes well with your passive, because your passive is going to be percent boost based on champions that you drift off of, and so percent plus flat is a good boost. And then you actually have slow resistance as well, 25% slow resistance on these, 1k gold. These are going to be Singe's best boot overall. I don't buy plated steel caps or merc treads as much these days because they increase the cost of these items so much. They're quite expensive in my opinion, and then they nerf the stats on them a bit too. However, versus certain team comps, you kind of have to buy them, right? So say you're against like a Quinn top lane, and then they have maybe like a Sivir ADC, and then perhaps their mid laner is Akshan or something like that. Maybe you should really consider going Tabby that game, steel caps, right? Or maybe you're against an Aurora top lane, and then they have like an Amumu jungle and a Leona support, or maybe even like a Nico support. Maybe you should really consider going Merc Treads that game, even though it's more cost. The value will be there for you, but you have to make that decision. Like, is it better for me to just have the synergistic boots, the greedy boots like Swifties? If they have a lot of slows, maybe these are the best ones, right? But these are just the generically best Singed boots, or do I have to consider their team comp here a little bit and go one of these other 2 boots? You'll learn more over time as you play more games, but that's kind of my thought process when I choose boots. Liandry's. Liandry's is your only true core item on Singed. The difference between this for Singed and other champions with their core items is that Singed does not always rush Liandry's first item. Sometimes you buy it second, because perhaps a different item is more useful to you in the early game. My best example of this is if I need to go Rock Up Belt early versus a ranged top laner. I need to scale my damage up, second item, so then I go Leandry's afterwards, right? Leandry's is your highest damage spike in the game, save for maybe a death cap, which is close. Not quite as much damage, but death cap will let you shred turrets really fast if you are split pushing as well. But in general, Leandry's is your most important Singed item. You just don't always buy it first, but most games you will buy it first. Just depends on the situation that you're in. Another good early game item, Rocket Belt, like I said, this item will allow you to gap close if the enemy champion has a spell shield, lets you pop the spell shield. It gives you decent, really good stats actually for the cost. I love Rocket Belt. It's really fun item. And you are able to get it for a very decent cost, 2.65k gold, 300 health, 20 ability haste, 70 ability power with the dash. 20 ability haste, by the way, is only 5 ability haste less than Cosmic Drive. So if you see, if I have a Rocket Belt, my ult cooldown goes down to 83 seconds from a base of 100. Or if I have Cosmic Drive, it goes down to 80 seconds, right? So for 350 gold, 350 gold less, I'm getting 3 seconds off less of my ultimate cooldown, but I am able to have it for a much lower cost. I'm able to have just as much, actually, is it less health? Almost as much health, same amount of ability power, almost as much ability haste, no movement speed, but I do have the dash, right? So this is an excellent early game option, especially versus ranged top laners, and even versus some fighters I like to buy. Like I like to buy Rocket Belt versus Riven, for example, to help dodge her Qs and get out of her range if she ults me, right? Decent against her. Rylai's, like I said, if you don't know what to buy, this is always a great option. Rylai's is actually not a core item, neither is Rocket Belt. These are not core items. Your only true core item is Leandry's. The reason I Rylai's is not core, even though many Singed players will tell you it's core, I disagree. The reason why is because it lowers your carry potential. Rylai's is an item that is going to be very team dependent. These other items, especially Leandry's, Death Cap, and Rocket Belt, even Bloodletters, are going to put a lot more agency in your hands as Singed to carry the game through damage. And your agency as Singed as a champion is already kind of low. So putting more power into your hands is going to more consistently win you more games, in my opinion, than building a Rylai's. But that being said, Rylai's is a very good item if your team is popping off, if your team is doing well, or if your team needs crowd control, or if you need to keep yourself safe in the side lane. If you're getting ganked repeatedly, Rylai's is a great option against that because it makes you a lot harder to kill on an individual level as well because of the permanent CC that you apply from your Poison Trail. I rush this item first against matchups that are going to try and stick to me and kill me. Best example is Darius. Another example is Nasus. If you have Rylai's and you fling Nasus away from you, he then has to chase you through your Rylai's to get back onto you. It's also good against Nasus in team fights for the same reason, where you can fling him away from your team, and now he has to run back through your Rylai's to catch them, right? Cosmic Drive is an option first item. This is going to be your best first item against a champion like Olaf, actually. Because you get to have your ultimate up more, you can kite him out a lot more easily. But it is an option as well because it gives you a lot more access to your ultimate. 80-second cooldown again, it gives you movement speed. Then whenever you actually apply damage to a champion, you get more movement speed from the actual Cosmic Drive itself, right? So you can see I have the plus 20 movement speed, and I'm able to be a little bit faster. And that is going to be a lot more noticeable as well whenever you have whenever you have boots. Say I have like level 3 ultimate as well. If I have Cosmic Drive up, now look how fast I am, right? This is quite nice. This is without ghosts, so something to consider. Maybe you're against a champion that is running you down a lot, but you don't want to go Rylai's because you want your ultimate up more. This is an option, right? I actually quite like Cosmic Drive versus fighters as well. Maybe I like it a lot versus Camille, right? Because with Camille, what she does is she will ult you whenever your fling is down, and then you don't have your fling to fling her out. Well, guess what? With Cosmic Drive, my fling is an 8-second cooldown. If I fling you, run away, and then you E onto me and ult me, I can fling you again. Now your ultimate is not going to trap me, right? It's an option. But because Singed is so versatile, you have to kind of read the room, read the situation that you're in, and try and itemize around that. There's a lot of different things that you can try to do. Shrelia's, this item I sometimes buy first. I buy it a bit less now because I like Rocket Belt more personally. I think it's more useful than Shrelia's, but if you are really poor or you need to get a gap closer really fast, Shrelia's is an option because it's super cheap. It's 2.2k gold, 50 ability power, 15 ability haste, 4% movement speed, mana regen, and then 30% movement speed on the active here. So let's see if I pop my ultimate. Then I pop Shrelia's. You can see I have 530 movement speed with just ult and Shrelia's. If I have like a swiftness boots with this, and then I do the same thing, I am quite a bit faster. See, 660 or 577. So something to actually I messed that up. I had the home guards on me. 571 with Swifties and Trillies, right? So that is level 3 ult. You'll be a bit slower with the level 1 and 2, but it is an option to consider if you are thinking about first items. But I feel like Rocket Belt fills the same purpose as Shirelia's for only a little bit more gold, and then you're able to have the ability to pop spell shield as well. So I don't buy this as much anymore, but it's an option for you if you want. Alright, going down to damage AP items. In the current League of Legends meta, I tend to build more AP heavy. And if I do buy a tank item, I only really buy one tank item. I very rarely buy two, but I never ever buy more than two. And you should follow the same rule, never buy more than two, right? Sometimes you buy one, but I like to buy more AP heavy because I like to carry with damage. And I think in the current meta, I think that's a very effective way to play because they removed a lot of damage from the game. So if you want to have agency individually, guess what? You have to have some damage, right? And the opposite is true if they reintroduce a lot of damage to the game. It's actually going to give you a lot more agency to go tankier, because if you're harder to kill in a super high burst damage meta, well, now you can turn fights around, right? At least that's how I logic it. That's how I think about it. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's served me very well for success on this champion. Like I said, Leander's is your only true core damage item. Every other item is situational, but you don't always buy it first. The other options that you have for damage items, I love Bloodletters. I absolutely love going Leandries into Bloodletters. This item is fantastic on Singed. It gives you ability haste, 400 health, 65 AP, but the big thing is that it is like an AP Black Cleaver. It will shred enemy MR 7.5% per tick of your poison. Poison ticks 4 times per second, 8 times total. This stacks up to 4 times for a total of 30%, meaning that if someone is in your poison for just 1 second, look, 4 stacks just like that, and now he's maximum MR shredded, right? This item is great on Singed. Leandries plus Bloodletter is a super good damage spike on 2 items. It gives you ability haste, damage, gives you a bit of everything. I like Bloodletters a lot more than Riftmaker in basically every situation, because even if you have Leandries and Riftmaker on 2 item spike, and you fight in the mid game when enemy champions tend to have lower MR, and maybe you deal more damage than Bloodletter, the difference is with Bloodletter, the longer the game goes, the better this item gets, and eventually what becomes a very close, almost tie, where Bloodletter slightly loses in DPS to Riftmaker, this will actually heavily out DPS Riftmaker as the game goes on. And I really don't buy Riftmaker as much anymore, unless I already have Death Cap. If I have Death Cap, then I'll buy Riftmaker, but I won't buy Riftmaker unless I have Death Cap. The reason why is because Riftmaker has just been very nerfed over time. It used to give 12% damage amp, now it only gives 8%, and I believe the AP was cut from like 90 down to 70 as well. It's just not as good as it used to be, and Singed doesn't really use the Omnivamp that well anyways, which is why if I'm going to buy Riftmaker, I always have Death Cap first, because Death Cap will always be better than Riftmaker in a vacuum, and then if you have both, well, you don't have to worry about it anymore, right? Speaking of Death Cap, I love Death Cap on Singed. This is really good on Singed as an item 2 or 3, in my opinion. You can play it as item 1 versus a fighter if you get really far ahead, and I like it in that situation, but I don't do it as much as I do Leandries or my other main AP items. So with Death Cap on item 2 or 3, say I have like Leandries and I go Death Cap, well, now I have 300 AP from 2 items, right? If I pop my level 3 ultimate here, 425 AP just like that, right? It is definitely an option that is quite fun and quite good on Singed, in my opinion. I think Death Cap as an AP item is somewhat core on Singed, almost. Not quite as much as Leandries, but I tend to buy this most games. They also buffed this item recently. It used to be 3,600 gold. It is now 3,500 gold. So it is 100 gold cheaper, meaning that there is only a 400 gold difference between, 400 gold difference between Riftmaker and Death Cap. And for your money, you're going to get a lot more value out of Death Cap on Singed because of his ultimate compared to Riftmaker, in my opinion. Death Cap also does not need time to charge up. Your fling hits a lot harder from the start of the fight immediately. Your fling AP ratio did get nerfed a bit, but it's still going to hit really hard with the Death Cap, obviously. And it allows you, it's good against, on Singed, if you have Bloodletters, it's good against tanks as well. It's good against squishies because of high flat damage. It's good against everything, really. The only concern that I have is survivability, but you're going to have other items to help you out with that as well. Love Death Cap. Okay, Zhonya's. So Zhonya's on Singed. This item is going to be very good against true damage and high crowd control and burst. So let's say you're against a Camille or Fiora, and they're pushing into you in side lane, right? And they're split pushing you, and then they're gonna dive you under a turret while your team is 4v4ing over here. Well, guess what? If you don't have Zhonya's, you're gonna die every time because their damage output in the later game is gonna be so high that you have no way to defend yourself, right? But if you have Zhonya's, that gives you 2.5 seconds of them to eat Poison Trail. You can get your Fling back up, your W back up, fling them, ghost away, regen a bit, right, during your ultimate, especially with Conqueror, and then you can turn fights against them. Or let's say that you're against maybe a hard CC comp. Maybe they have like a Jarvan, right, and they ult you and you don't have a flash up, you can't get out of there. Or they have a Thresh and he hooks you and ults you, and then you can't get away because you're 99% slowed and you can't activate a phase rush because you can't get in range of anyone. Zhonya's is your best friend. I buy Zhonya's, I would say, versus AD comps a lot. Like 80 to 90% of the time, I buy Zhonya's. I prefer AP items over tank items currently, and so Zhonya's versus Deadman's, I tend to go Zhonya's more, even though Deadman's is going to be a bit more raw tanky. Your carry potential on Singed with Zhonya's skyrockets, in my opinion, because it builds out a needless large rod. You get 105 ability power, and the invulnerability can help you make really big plays. And plus, whenever enemy champions overcommit to you, right, and you're in a Zhonya's, let's say I'm like in the middle of enemies and they're overcommitting to me, oh no, they're gonna CC me and kill me, now they're all walking my Poison Trail, I pop Zhonya's, draw my Poison Trail, my team has 2.5 seconds to come and help me, now you guys are all dead, right? I love this item. I think it's awesome on Singed. Again, you don't have any health, but I think it's super valuable because of the damage that you get and the invulnerability, the armor as well. Not bad versus AD champions either, but very good against true damage and hard CC. Cosmic Drive, I talked about this a bit, but the longer the game goes, the better Cosmic Drive becomes at the end, especially if you have Death Cap, because with Death Cap and Cosmic Drive, now your fling is 6.4 seconds, and it's going to deal super high damage because of your Death Cap, right? So let's say I have Ult Up, I have Death Cap, and I have Cosmic Drive. Let's say I have a few other items as well, like this. My fling is dealing 499 damage on a 5.5 second cooldown. Think about that. 500 damage, 5-second cooldown, right? That is a lot of damage to think about whenever, and plus it's, you know, your fling is gonna apply Leandry's, you're gonna fling in your poison, you're gonna get poison damage, and then you have fling again, W again, right? Your W is 9-second cooldown. It's quite decent in the later stage of the game, because of synergy with your fling, right? So Cosmic Drive is a decent later game option. Rift Maker, I talked about this already, but I never buy Rift Maker unless I already have Death Cap. So a super high damage Singed build would look something like this, where I go like this. So I have Zhonya's, I have Leandry's, Bloodletters, Death Cap, Rift Maker. If I pop R, I have 770 AP. This is with a little bit of Gathering Storm up as well. Then I'm able to just apply a absolute carpet bomb of poison damage, and it is a very fun time. However, like I said before, I never ever go Rift Maker unless I already have Death Cap, because the item on its own without Death Cap is not that good on Singed anymore, in my opinion. Rallies, I already talked about that item. This is an interesting one, Banshees. So Banshees is whenever I'm building high AP, right, and the game goes later, I like Banshees more than other MR items. It only gives you 40 MR, but your ultimate makes up for a lot of that in the later stages of the game. The benefit is that you have a lot of AP. You have the shield, which lets you block an ability. It's just like the AP version of Zhonya's. Sometimes I even go both, right? So I actually have a decent amount of tanky stats. So like let's say, for example, I have a late game build that looks like this, right? You would think that I'm pretty squishy because I have three items that don't give me any HP. But because of my ultimate, I actually get quite tanky. I have 266 armor, 216 MR. Let's say maybe I even have like a health potion on top of this. 3,400, almost 3,500 HP, right? Then in an actual game, you'd have conditioning stacks as well. I'd actually have maybe potentially with this setup, you could even go double health shards, and you could have a lot more HP than this. You could have almost 4,000 HP, right? With this setup and your level 3 ultimate. Now you're very hard to kill. You have a lot of damage as well. You have 800 AP with this setup, so something to consider if you don't like tank items as much. Banshees, I actually quite like a lot on Singed. People will roast me for that one, but the people that roast me for that one are also 2,000 LP below me, so don't listen to them. Banshees is quite nice. Okay, Crypt Bloom and Void Staff. If you are solo AP, these are better than Bloodletter, because a Bloodletter helps your teammates deal more magic damage by shredding MR. These are just penetration. So these will actually perform better against turrets, because turrets have flat MR, which you can't shred, especially going into like tier 2s, right? Tier 2 turrets are going to have a lot more, tier 3s will have a lot more. However, again, if you're solo AP, what are the chances that they're going to even buy MR? If they buy some because you're super fed as solo AP, maybe you do buy Crypt Bloom or Void Staff. I like Crypt Bloom a lot because Singe is a great Crypt Bloom carrier. You have a lot of assists on Singe to pop the heal. Void Staff is decent as well. They buffed it, gives you 95 ability power now, which is just a huge amount for this item. But if you're solo AP and they're not buying MR, then I wouldn't bother with these items. But if you are solo AP and they are buying MR, consider them, right? Okay, tank items. Like I said earlier, tank items, I generally don't buy more than one if I have to. And that item is usually going to be a Dead Man's Plate. So yeah, if I'm against a team comp where I need to get in range, they're running away, or if I need to just be faster in the side lane as well, just cross-map faster. Dead Man's is really good for cross-map running. And mobility in team fights or catching people. I like this item. I think it's a great Singe item. Whenever you buy a tank item in Singe, however, you have to always consider that your damage will suffer because you're putting a lot of gold into not AP, right? And AP is very important right now if you want to deal damage. That being said, people love this item on Singed, and I agree, it's a good Singed item. I tend to buy it more if I'm solo frontline as well. But it's never going to be a bad Singe item, right? You could even pull something like this where you go, maybe you go like Leandry's Bloodletter, and then maybe, oh, I need to get a little bit tankier because my team also needs frontline and I have to like move around in a fight and just cross map faster. Maybe you're teleporting a lot and your TP's off cooldown and I have to run from mid, clear a wave, TP's down, and then run to Otacon. Well, I have Dead Man's Plate, I can get there a lot faster than if I didn't have it, right? Because I'm going to get 4% movement speed plus the 20 flat from the active. I can even, or from the passive, I can even pop my ultimate and get up here faster as well, right? Because the percent movement speed will do well with my ultimate movement speed. It's gonna be plus 95 at level 3, right? It just depends on what you're trying to do. Great item against champions that are gonna try and run you down again. Like, you know, your Darius, Tryndamere, Nasus, things like that. I love Deadman's versus Nasus because of the slow resistance that you get. It stacks with the Swiftness Boots slow resistance, so plus 15% on DMP, 25% on Swiftness Boots. Great combo for being resistant to slows. So against champions that will spam those on you, it is quite nice. And if your team comp has very high damage, then I wouldn't worry about building heavier frontline, and I'd be okay with buying it, right? It's going to depend. As a rule, like I said, I tend to not buy more than one. If I do buy two, I never as a rule ever buy more than two tank items ever. Okay, moving on. Force of Nature, it's just the MR version of Dead Man's Plate. It does basically the same thing. You don't have that passive 20% movement speed, but say you're against like a Malzahar or a Cassiopeia or even a Teemo, right, where they're going to stack damage on you very quickly. This is quite nice because then you'll stack up the MR and you get the extra movement speed at the end to be even faster. If you do buy two tank items, this is a very fun setup. Like, this is a very classic Singe setup, right? So you go like Leandry's, Rylai's, Deadman's, Force of Nature. Right now I have armor, MR, I have 8% movement speed, plus an additional 6% when Force of Nature stacks up. Then I'm going to have the plus 20 from Deadman's Plate. I'll be very fast. I have not as high damage as I used to from Leander's and Rylai's, but I have enough damage, right, where I'm able to still drift through a fight, right? I'm very fast. I can get 1,000 movement speed there, and I'm able to run through. The DPS is a lot lower than if I had full AP, but my mobility is decent, and if I'm solo frontline, this is a great setup, right? Jack Show, in the later stages of the game, this is going to be quite a decent item. The hard part is charging it up before you go into the fight and hard commit to the fight, because the value of the item is going to be on that after 5 seconds, you gain 30% armor MR. That being said, because of your ultimate, and this giving you 30% extra of each stat, and your ultimate giving you a lot, this is going to be a very high value on Singe in later parts of the game, right? So let's say, for example, I pop my R, now I'm 261 armor, 221 MR. I'll go ahead and go into combat here. We'll wait 5 seconds, watch my armor and MR. 307, 267, and that's with just Jack Show, right? It's a very, very synergistic item for Singed. Never ever buy Jack Show versus true damage because they will ignore it and your resistances are completely useless. The resistance is the whole point of this item, so never ever buy this item versus like Fiora or Camille. Not good against them. But again, if you're solo frontline, consider it. I like it a lot. Unneeded Spare is also a mixed resist item where you get 25 armor and MR. You get more health than Jack Show, but it doesn't. You're not effectively tankier than Jack Show. Trust me, you're not. You do get ability haste, which is quite nice. It's a lot cheaper. It's 2,800 compared to 3,200. But with this item, I tend to only buy this if I have Conqueror, because it gives you a Conqueror stack, and the healing synergizes with the Conqueror more. I never buy this with the Phase Rush setup ever. Frozen Heart is a decent rush item against AD heavy top laners like Jace, Quinn, Set, things like that. Even okay versus Nasus somewhat, but you'd probably be better off going Rylai's. Just champions that have a lot of AD, they're going to hit hard physically, and you want a nice early game item to try and get you through the laning phase. It's quite good against them. Gives you mana, ability haste to spam your ultimate as well to farm. It is an option, right? Canic Rookern, this is really good if the enemy team has really high poke damage, like a Xerath, or maybe like a LeBlanc that's going to pop through your Fog of War, smack you, and then back off because of that shield that you gain based on 15% of your health whenever you have your other singed items. Like maybe you have like this type of setup, right? The shield gets bigger and bigger, and it's going to give you more and more value as the game goes on. Randuin's only buy this versus heavy crit, like Gangplank, Tryndamere, fed 80 carry. Maybe they have like an Ashe that's fed, or like a Jhin that's fed, right? Buy this against them. Locket of the Iron Solari and Zeke's. These two items are kind of hidden OP on Singed, but they are not hidden OP in general. Everyone knows these items are very broken because Locket is just like the core support defensive item. And it's just a super OP item. It's 2.2k gold, so it's similar situation as Shurelya's, where it's very cheap, but you're going to get 25 armor and MR, so you're actually gaining the same armor and MR as Unending Despair, which is a full tank item, the same armor and MR, the same ability haste. You're getting 200 less health, however, but you're saving a lot of gold. You're saving 600 gold compared to that item. Then the active of this will actually let you have a shield where you can shield yourself and everyone around you, your teammates, right? So what this ends up meaning is that what ends up meaning is that because the shield scales off of your level, and you're going to be like leveling up faster than a support would, your shield gets a lot bigger faster than a support shield would, because it's based on your level, right? So this is actually quite a decent Singed item if you do need armor and MR, and you need it very fast, because the item is so cheap. Consider it. Zeke's on Singed. So Zeke's I actually quite like a lot. You gain 100 more health than Locket, but you don't get the shield, right? So this is a more selfish item. However, what happens is whenever you pop your ultimate, you have this extra damage and extra slow around you, right? So if you're in a situation maybe where you were not able to buy Rylai's early into the game, you were not able to buy Rylai's early into the game, and you need mixed resistances, so maybe you bought like Leandry's Bloodletter first, and then all of a sudden now, hey, I need to have CC, but I also need to survive a fight with armor and MR. This is an option for you, because now, guess what? I have CC, and I have my other damage items, and I'm able to punish you a lot harder and survive longer than if I went a Rylai's here, right? It's an option. Warmogs, I don't buy this item as much anymore, but it is an option if you are against a pokey split pusher later into the game. But I just don't think this item is as good on Singed anymore ever since they've removed the movement speed from it. I don't buy it as much anymore, honestly, but it's there as an option if you want it, because it's an okay item. And situational items, right? So situationally, you can actually buy Serpent's Fang on Singed, and the reason why is because the shield shred applies on every tick of poison. So 4x per second, you just absolutely delete shields. However, the stats are completely useless. You don't use AD, you don't use lethality on Singed, so you just buy this if you have to deal with shields and your team does not have good access to shield shred, right? So if the enemy team comp has like Ivern plus Lulu, that's a lot of shielding to cut through. This is quite good against them. Funnily enough, it also just deletes Camille's passive, but you don't really buy this against her that much. But it does delete her shields very fast if you are Singed. So Singed is one of the best users of the effect, not the best user of the stats, however. So bear in mind, it is hyper situational if you're against specifically like Ivern plus another shield champion, in my opinion. Medjai's, if you have 10 stack Darksteel, you can maybe go Medjai's. If you have 10 stack of this, you're going to gain 10% movement speed, and that's quite good on Singed, obviously, 10% movement speed. The full stack Medjai's will never, ever be as much AP as a Death Cap because of the Death Cap amplification passive. I think full Medjai's is like 150 AP, or like 120 AP. For very cheap, it's 1,000 gold total. But Death Cap on its own, I think, is 130. Then it amplifies your ultimate, is amplified by ultimate as well, right? So the purpose of this item is snowball. and it's actually quite a high win rate on Singe, but the reason why is because you're already winning if you buy Magi's. I don't buy it as much just because on Singed, I play very, very aggressively, and I will almost always die eventually and lose the stacks. At which point the item is pointless, then you'd rather just have something else, so I tend to almost never buy this. If I have a 10-stack Dark Seal, I will sell it for a component that either gives me more ability power or gives me ability power and ability haste, right? So I would consider, for example, a Fiendish Codex to be more valuable than a 10-stack Dark Seal. 10-stack Dark Seal gives you 45 AP, by the way. So, if I... 4 ability power per weapon 10... It's 55, my bad. I believe, right? Yeah, because 40 plus 15, 55, yeah. So it's 55 AP for a full stack Dark Seal. I would sell this for a Fiendish Codex. Even though I'm losing 30 AP, the ability haste and the ability to buy into a bigger item, like a Market Belt or something like that later on, is, in my opinion, more valuable than having the AP of Dark Seal. However, in the early game, if you don't have, like, restricted amount of item slots and you have a 10-stack Dark Seal, just keep it. It's a lot of value for you, right? Okay. Full builds, let's go into some full build examples, right? So I'll just use Swiftness Boots as like a generic setup. If I'm going to be going a super AP heavy setup, for damage, let's say my team comp has good frontline, good CC, good engage, right? Maybe like that Alistar support. Then I would maybe do something like this. Or you could even potentially sell the Rylai's here later into the game because this item gets outscaled by other items. Maybe you can get a Riftmaker, right? In this situation, I'd say Riftmaker is okay if you're already full build. Maybe you don't go Riftmaker, maybe you go Cosmic Drive, right? Because Cosmic Drive will make your fling hit really hard with a death cap, you know? So that is an option for you to consider. But that would be a good example of like a full AP build, which I like to go a lot. A more standard build would be something like this, where let's say I go Liandry's Rylai's early, I grab like a Dead Man's. What should I buy now? Enemy is going to be scaling into the second half of the game. They're going to be getting tankier, but I also need to survive. You can get like a Bloodletters and maybe like a Zhonya's, or maybe you can even go like a Jack Show, right? At this stage now I have a decent mix of tanky stats, I have a decent mix of damage, I can shred MR, with level 3 ult I have 386 AP, so the flat AP is not that high, but your poison damage over time will be decent because of your Bloodletter plus Liandry's combo, right? But like I said, I never buy more than 2 tank items. Let's say I need to go more frontline heavy, right? So then if I need to go more frontline heavy, because for whatever reason my team picked a squishier team comp, then I could do like Liandry's into Deadman's, into Force of Nature, into Rylai's, and then maybe grab like a Bloodletter. Something like this is an option if you have to go more frontline heavy. You're not going to be as raw tanky as if you had like Deadman's plus Jack Show, but if you really need to, then you could probably sell the Rylai's and then get like, you know, maybe a Riftmaker, and you'll have a bit more damage and more effective HP because of the Omnivamp. It really just depends, right? But as a rule, your only true core item is going to be Liandry's, and you don't even always buy it first, because sometimes you go Rocket Belt first, or you go Rylai's first. It really just depends. And then you kind of build around these items, and you sort of build like to what would succeed more with your team comp, right? Team comp has a lot of damage. Maybe I go tankier. Team comp has a lot of CC and good engage and good frontline. Maybe I just go very damage heavy, right? As Singed, you can fulfill a lot of niches. Maybe my team comp has very low engage. Maybe I need to get in there and pop spell shields and get flings. Well, guess what? You can even do something like this, where now I have movement speed, I have engage power, right? I'm able to pop spell shields and get in range and catch people and fling and do what I need to do. So I'm aware that I talked very quickly in this video. I was trying to summate, condense a lot of information into a very short amount of time. Check out the Singed spreadsheet. If you haven't, I will put a link for it in the description, which is going to have a lot more information than I could cover in this in 44 minutes so far. Check out the streams, stop by, feel free to hang out, twitch.tv/minishcap1. Please leave a like and subscribe, and leave a comment with your thoughts on the video. Helps me out a lot. Thank you guys for watching. I do appreciate it. I'll catch you next one. Mwah. Peace, guys.